Hi folks, Steven here. So, this is going to be a recap of last weekend, the Midwest Gaming Classic. I went to that in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So yeah, this is a little different experience for me. I'd wanted to go to this kind of for a while. I'd heard a lot about it, and I almost went to it 2 years ago, but in between Anime Milwaukee and this event, well, some things happened, and they did have a small event last year that I unfortunately missed as sort of a semi-makeup, I guess. But this last weekend was the convention back in full force at... I have a new location for them, but one that you will probably recognize. Alright, so let's sort of talk about what's going on with that. Now, I'll be frank right here, there's a little bit of Pokemon content in here, but not as much as you might expect. They didn't have any Pokemon-specific guests or anything like that, so... However, I do have plenty to share, and I think you will still enjoy it. If anyone who's watching this went there, I'd love to know what your favorite parts were. But as usual, I have a little bit of a slideshow to demonstrate what I did while I was there. So, just momentarily, and there we go. Alright, so yes, Midwest Gaming Classic 2022. Like I said, there was one like back in November last year, but their normal slot is in the spring, and obviously that's been a little difficult, and they're finally back now. So there you can see some pictures, give you an idea of some of the stuff. When they say Gaming Classic, there's a lot of video games, but there's also pinball, there's also tabletop gaming, in terms of board games and card games, all that stuff. Pretty much any type of, if it counts as a game, it can be represented there. So, yeah, this is at the Wisconsin Center, which we'll be talking about a little bit. That venue name may sound a little bit familiar. Alright, so, this was a 3-day event. I was not going as pressed, since there weren't any guests that I was personally interested in as far as like getting an interview or something like that. So I actually went there on Saturday and Sunday. So let's see, Saturday, so I took a bus ride. Now, I usually wind up driving from Madison to Milwaukee, but this time I decided I would take it all on bus. So I actually took the Madison City bus to get to the Intercity bus stop, which is on the UW campus here in Madison, and took that all the way over to the intermodal station in downtown Milwaukee. So, there. It was sort of an experiment on my part. I wanted to see what it was like, and not having to drive that. It's not a super long drive. It's like an hour and a half, and I certainly could have gotten there more quickly if I had decided to get out there myself. But I just want to give this a try. It wasn't too expensive either, especially considering that then I didn't have to park at the whatever hotel I stayed at downtown or during the event. So that was kind of nice. The way this bus route works is it runs from Madison to Milwaukee. It actually has a couple stops. There's a couple stops right in Madison, one on campus, and I think one near the Capitol Square, and then one on the east side. And then it goes until it gets to, the Johnson Creek Premium Outlets, which are in Jefferson County. So that's their stop there. It's a premium mall in between Madison and Milwaukee that I've been to a couple times. But it's also, there's a decent number of people living in Jefferson County, so that's their stop. And then they have, I think it's Girk's Corners, which is in Waukesha County. It's in between Brookfield and Waukesha or thereabouts. So it's in the west suburbs of Milwaukee there. And then you actually get to what's called the intermodal station in downtown Milwaukee. And there's actually a stop after that. It goes to the Mitchell Airport in Milwaukee. That's Milwaukee's airport. As you can see from these pictures here, these were on Saturday. It was fairly rainy on the bus. It got quite a bit. Thankfully, it wasn't raining that much. I didn't need a full-scale umbrella while I was there. Although we did, on Saturday night, we got some thunderstorms that moved through. So it got through that. To be honest, the space is maybe, at least to me, not as interesting, but, nothing against the people who live there. In any case, once I got to Milwaukee, I headed over to, yes, the Wisconsin Center. Now, don't let this picture fool you. This picture is, yes, the same photo I used of the exterior from when I was at Anime Milwaukee back in February. It was a little bit warmer. I wouldn't call it super warm, although the sky was about the same. It was about as overcast this weekend as it was back there, but it was considerably warmer at the end of April into early May. But this venue is in downtown Milwaukee. It's gone through a number of name changes over the years. For a long time, it was known as the Midwest Express Center. Then Midwest got purchased by Frontier. Then Frontier eventually sold the naming rights to Delta, and now it's just the Wisconsin Center. You'll be seeing this again, presumably next month, when I head to the Midwest Regionals for Pokémon. That's also at the Wisconsin Center, so we'll see how all that does. I tend to do a recap there and maybe get some interviews. We'll see what happens. And just to give you an idea of how this place is laid out, the Wisconsin Center has 3 floors. The bottom, or the first level and the third level are where a lot of the stuff is. There's a little bit of stuff on the second floor, although that's mostly where like the skywalks are to some of the hotels. In downtown Milwaukee. So as you can see there, I know you can't read all the numbers there, but there was a lot of the main shopping area, as well as the tabletop and card gaming stuff was all on the first level. Second level had a panel room and stuff, and then the third level is where all of the pinball and video game stuff. And on top of all this, actually, some of the third floor was also being used for a gymnastics event that was being held at the convention center at the same time. So we were sharing some space. I didn't hear too many complaints and stuff like that, but always kind of interesting when you have a case like that. All right, so one thing I went to, there were a number of panels at this one. It wasn't as panel heavy as some of the anime conventions. I think they expect people to spend more time just playing games at a convention like this. And to be honest, I actually did not know who all was going to be there. I met some very interesting people that I'll talk about through this. Right here we have Kevin Bayless and David Wise, who were formerly employees at Rare, the video game company based in the UK. They were there back in the 80s and into the 90s, and I guess into the early 2000s. I'm not sure exactly when they moved on. It might have been different times. Eventually, of course, Rare, they worked with Nintendo for many years until the early 2000s, where they were bought by Microsoft, who now owns the studio. But in any case, they were talking about the early sort of days there, going through like the Donkey Kong, their early NES work into Donkey Kong Country, into their N64 stuff like Diddy Kong Racing and GoldenEye and stuff like that. So David Wise was the music composer for many of the games in that era, although it's interesting, he did the music for a lot of the NES games and most of Battletoads, but not the actual pause music, which was someone else, which if you heard the pause music is kind of interesting and a little different from everything else, so that kind of explains that one. But they were talking about the process they used and how they, they gave the story I'd heard a little bit before about how Rare had bought these Silicon graphics computers, and that was how they ended up making Donkey Kong Country and stuff like that, that big 90s hit that really put them on the map. But David Wise, the musician, no offense to Kevin, David Wise, being a musically inclined person myself, it was so much fun to actually get to talk to David a little bit afterwards and ask him some questions about various aspects of the games he worked on. So, of course, they're now both independent developers. David, more recently, has worked on a number of video games, including the Tropical Freeze Donkey Kong Country Returns game. So that's a pretty big one there. So really neat to meet one of my, I guess you could say, heroes. I try not to have heroes too much, no matter how great people they are, but meeting these two folks was really a cool thing there. And they had a pretty decent panel despite some technical issues. Unfortunately, that ate up some of their time there. Alright, gaming YouTubers. I'm sure some of you out there recognize some of these. I don't remember the names of every one of them, but I recognize a lot of them. So yeah, this was talking about what it's like being a gaming YouTuber and stuff like that. And so you can see they have about 6 people in there. On the far left, you can see Pat Contry from the Completely Unnecessary podcast and Pat the NES Punk videos that you might know. I think the next one is, Adam Koralik. I'm not as familiar with his stuff. I know his name. Next one is, so the left center there is John Hancock. I'm familiar with a lot of his stuff. Obviously, I think he happens to be, his day job, he happens to be a teacher, so having parents who are current or former teachers, I think that's pretty cool. The guy to the right of him, I do not know his name, but he's got a very interesting story. He's actually, unfortunately, sadly, lost part of both of his limbs. I don't know if he was born without them or if it was an accident, but still managed to put some stuff together. I'll have to take a look. Hopefully I'll get a chance there. The next one on there, unfortunately, you cannot see his face because of when I took this picture. I think that is John Riggs. but I'm not sure about that one. And then on the far right, you can see, I forget his real name, but Metal Jesus Rocks. sort of told you there by the Kiss t-shirt that he's wearing. So I had all of them. One thing I kind of think, as much as cool as it is to have all these guys up here at once, it does kind of make, like, every question people want to ask a lot of the questions to, like, all 6 of them, which takes a while. They did record these, so you might actually hear me in some of them. Because I did ask some questions. I asked them, like, what was their early capture setup like? Because I'm always fascinated, like, before we had all the things, like all the HDMI devices we have now, and all the things like the RetroTink and the OSSC that help you with older games, how you sort of got by there and what your equipment setup was like. Mostly they talked about, obviously, it being a lot of work, a lot of interesting stories that they had there. So that was kind of neat. Many of them also had booths. So did the folks, the X-Rare guys. So that was kind of neat. I got to talk to them a little bit after the panel as well. Pat had no trouble selling out of his Super Nintendo book that he was selling out on the show floor. I kind of wish I had picked up a copy, but try to limit how many physical goods I buy these days. Also, his position next to there was I don't know if you call him a vendor, but there was a certain company represented there that Pat has not had some nice things to say about that happened to be right next door to him, which I found kind of ironic. So that was kind of interesting. All right, Kelsey Lewin. Let's see. She had hoped to have another person from where she works there, but she's from the Video Game History Foundation. They have like 3 employees, but they do a lot of work trying to preserve artifacts. Not necessarily the games themselves, but sometimes that. But also some of like documents, prototype versions, magazines, and stuff like that. And she talked about, all the stuff that they do and all that things. And, her and another person, I'd made sure to share some contact info in case they ever needed to use some of my stuff in there, and I'd be interested in possibly doing an interview with someone from the foundation there at some point. I need to make sure I put that one out there, but that was a neat panel. She was also at a panel I saw on Sunday morning, it was like 11, where she and a couple other female gamers, and not just video gamers, like some of them were card gamers, one of them, they had air hockey there, and they had I don't know, professional probably isn't quite the right word, because I don't think it's the way she makes her living, but they had a very skilled, let's put it that way, female air hockey player on that panel on Sunday morning. So, but Kelsey was in that one as well. She's, like I said, more from the video game history, which she sort of explained that, yeah, it's been hard getting, buy-in from certain entities. Getting grants is really tough, because I'm sure as more people who've played video games a lot get into, politics and government and stuff like that, that'll be easier. But she wants to obviously get, stuff now that we otherwise might lose. But very interesting things there. All right, I did do some shopping there. They had a pretty big show floor where you could go in and buy all sorts of stuff. I had talked about how, the last couple times I've been Anime Milwaukee, there hasn't been a lot of gaming stuff, which, yes, it's an anime expo. You expect a lot of anime stuff there. But there's usually pretty good correlation between people who like anime and people who like video games. This time around, no such problems. Tons of video game stuff there. I picked up, I didn't pick up as much stuff as I thought I might have. I think I'm maybe getting to the point where I have some rare stuff or some stuff that it's getting shorter on my list of things I absolutely need to have. I did look up a few things. I'll always look for stuff for sound tests, but these two I picked up kind of for sentimental reasons. On the left, you see Yoshi's Cookie. This isn't the Super Nintendo version. It seems like Nintendo always puts out, the NES version when they re-release it, like on the Virtual Console and stuff like that. They do something similar with Wario's Woods. In the case of Wario Woods, I know it's because like the Super Nintendo version was like a North American or Western exclusive or something like that. I don't know if that was the case for Yoshi's Cookie, but it has some additional modes, I believe. I believe it has a turn-based puzzle mode and stuff. I think that the NES doesn't have. It's either the Versus Com thing on there, but it has some stuff there. Over on the right, you can probably guess just from looking at the cover what that is. That is the Japanese version of Hey You Pikachu. I forget what exactly the name is. on the Japanese version, but it was, I won't say exactly what I paid, but the one on the right, pretty cheap. And if you've ever looked at a copy of the English Hey You Pikachu, you know the cartridge is quite cheap. It's the microphone and the connector for the N64 that'll set you back. So if you're just buying the game, that's not too expensive. And I suspect that the Japanese one is pretty much the same way here. So I got this for relatively low. They actually had a number of the Japanese Pokemon in the 64 games. They had all the Pokemon Stadium games. Remember, there are 3 in Japan instead of 2 because Gen 1 had 2 Japanese Stadium games, so we only got the second one. They also had a copy of Snap, which was kind of interesting. There are some regional differences beyond just the language, but I don't want to get your hopes up. First of all, I do not know if... I do have the microphone for the North American version of Hey You Pikachu, but I have no idea if it works. I know like the cartridge, the only difference between Japanese and American N64 cartridges is where the notches are, so you can get around that pretty well, fairly easily if you know what you're doing. If you look on the back side of a cartridge. And then the... but I don't know if it's compatible with the Japanese version of the game, if they made any internal tweaks or stuff like that. And even if it is, my Japanese probably is not good enough to play that game. Since you not only have to read Japanese, but you actually have to speak it. So that's kind of interesting, but I figured as a sentimental thing, it wasn't a bad thing to pick up there. I did consider picking up more of the Japanese stuff on there, but didn't really have too much of an interest. I don't know if the transfer pack is cross-compatible either, so we'll see how all that works. I do have like a Japanese copy of Red, which presumably would work with the Japanese Pokemon Stadium, but I don't know if that would, all that stuff there. So many pieces in all of this. But you can see there. So those were the 2 cartridges. I also picked up a retro magazine that publishes like bi-monthly. I'll need to have a lot of stuff to go over when I get a chance. I also bought an ebook from one of the guys there. I'll talk about him a little bit later when I do my summary, because he was a pretty interesting... There were several very interesting personalities that I didn't get to see at any panels. Alright, well, let's talk about the video game area on the 3rd floor. This is just a very small part that you can see there. First of all, on the left, they have a museum area, which included, as you can see there, a Virtual Boy. And I'm guessing it looks like they have a TV out-modded one. Probably because some folks, given recent events over the last couple of years, do not want to put their face inside that thing where other people's faces have been not their first choice. So they do have that hooked up. Of course, you don't get the 3D effect in there, and it looks like they have Wario Land, one of the better regarded Virtual Boy games, out of the few dozen that there were. But there was a ton of stuff here. If I had been covering this as actual press, I would have taken many more photos in here and probably bought my dedicated cameras and stuff like that. There was pinball stuff. There was a lot of arcade games, a lot of console games. A huge portion of this floor. The pinball stuff, actually, some folks had basically homemade pinball machines where they had made their own themed pinball games around various concepts or franchises or stuff like that. And then they had Tesla, of all folks, had a couple of their cars on display there. I mean, I get that there's probably some correlation. I didn't know what Tesla's trade show, non-car trade show footprint was. They do have a service center in Milwaukee, and they have one here in Madison as well that opened within the last year or so. And I'm sure there's some correlation, and people interested in video games and stuff would probably be, early adopters and stuff. But I found that kind of interesting and kind of random in there. So that was kind of neat. Still waiting, just in case you're curious, I have a Tesla Model 3 on pre-order. Still waiting for that. Looks like it's been delayed again. So that's fun. But like I said, these pictures here, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, barely do this area justice. There was a lot there. Alright. I don't usually talk about the hotel I stay at, especially since sometimes I'm still at it when I do these recap streams, and I really don't want to advertise exactly where I am. But I made the mistake of booking my hotel last minute and paid kind of through the nose for that one. So, first of all, make sure you're careful about that. But I ended up staying at a place called the St. Kate Hotel, which is, I guess, more of an artsy hotel. And here's a few things. First of all, on the left, you can see they actually have an art gallery. They had some quilts and other art pieces of art around the lobby and stuff like that, and in a few dedicated rooms there. Then when we got into my room, they had, yeah, you can see that, a ukulele and an actual record player. Although I didn't play anything on it, it is, Crosley, which is not a very well-regarded brand. You can get better stuff around there, but I guess it works for them, so nothing too nasty there. There was also like colored pencils and paper in there, and they had some interesting art on like the walls of the bedroom of the hotel room. But yeah, interesting place to say the least. And in fact, I was there on Saturday night, and in the lobby they had like a live band there, which was kind of neat. I would have spent more time there if I wasn't so tired from the carrying stuff around all day. But yeah, kind of an interesting place. I kind of recommend you stay there at least once if you're in Milwaukee for something. Certainly more interesting than a lot of hotels I've been in before. I don't know how exactly long or what brand umbrella they're under or anything like that, but kind of interesting. Okay. Dinner! So, yeah, I always like to see what I have for dinner when I do a multi-day thing at one of these to show you here. This is Maharaja, so this is some chicken masala, I think is how it's pronounced, or marsala, I forget exactly, but you can see the rice there and the spicy chicken in there. I also got some ice cream to go with it, and let's see, and some bread to go with it, although I ate the bread I had first thing in the morning next day. I also got tea, which I didn't realize would be hot tea, so I tossed that in the fridge there and had that wake me up in the morning. So yeah, pretty good food. At least I think they still have a place here in Madison as well. For some reason that doesn't deliver to my place. I'm not sure exactly why. All right. So Sunday, I told you I went to a couple more panels, like the women who also play games, or who happen to play games. I forget exactly what they called it. Let's see. Also, board gaming attempt. There's a board game. I tried to get a game started before I left of It's a Wonderful World, which is this sort of engine-building drafting game that I've played a fair number of times, but unfortunately I just couldn't get anyone to do that there. I wish I kind of had gone there earlier. And then I took a bus ride home. It's a little unfortunate. One of the folks I met there is at the convention was Norman Caruso, the gaming historian. You may know him from that YouTube channel. First of all, I did share some information with him just in case he ever needs to do some background research on Western Pokémon music or stuff like that. So I did exchange some information there. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it to his panel, which was right at the end of the day at 3, around when my bus took me back. But I did get to talk to him for a little bit, which was nice. Then I took a bus ride home, which was fairly uneventful, other than, let's see, after I got off the intercity bus and then took the Madison Metro bus back to my place, at the connection place, I had trouble getting to the bus that at the transfer point, and I missed the first one. I had to wait for the second one. That was, I'm sure, partially my fault, but it was kind of confusing. It could have been a lot colder, I suppose, but not fun waiting around for half an hour for the next bus to come. I guess partially my fault, but still. In any case, I did make it home. I think parts of my legs are still a little bit sore from all the walking and standing that I did around there, so I'm trying to give myself a little bit of a break. But overall, really enjoyed my time there. Met a few other interesting folks, which, yes, a lot of fun, interesting people. Like, for example, there was a guy there who worked a number of Western arcade games. So he worked on Q*bert, at least some version of it. He also worked on Terminator 2 and Revolution X for the arcades, among others. So let's go through. Terminator 2, of course, is based on the movie, and he got to do some digital capture. Now, unfortunately, he did not get to meet Arnold himself. He got to work with his stunt double and the actress, I forget her name, who played Sarah Connor in that one, I believe. I guess he got to work with her stunt double. I think the person who played the T-1000 is the actual actor that he got to work with for that. I sort of asked him what the process was of digitizing stuff back then. He also got to work on Revolution X, which, if you don't know, is a kind of bizarre... It's a game based around Aerosmith, the band. Yes, that Aerosmith. And he actually got to meet members of the band. They actually came in and got digitized for stuff. It's that one. Both it and T2 are both kind of rail shooters. The T2 is obviously more of a gritty game, and the Revolution X is one that is more of a. It doesn't take itself. It's kind of over the top in a different way. It's because of the nature of it, where you are the resistance, culturally speaking, and you throw like CDs. But he had some great stories about getting to meet members of the band and stuff like that, which was pretty cool. Let's see, who else did I meet? Let's see, there was also a guy, I do not remember his name, unfortunately, who worked on Rampage. Not a game I have a ton of familiarity with, although I'm very familiar with the series and its premise, and of course it was made into a movie a couple of years ago. That was neat. But it turns out he also worked on a Star Trek Voyager arcade game. I guess in the late 90s, because it was far enough into the show that like 7 of 9 was on there, so it's probably at least the 4th season. That was also kind of, that was a sit-down cab, but I guess it was kind of a rail shooter, where you're like either like fending off Borg or infiltrating a Borg cube or something like that is probably how it worked, because that would be sort of the thing you would feature on there. And he didn't get to meet any of the actors for that show, this guy, but he did get to meet, ran into LeVar Burton, who wasn't expecting their team to show up there and was a little angry at first until someone who was a big Star Trek fan kind of calmed him down. So that was a fun story from another person there. And just overall, just a lot of really interesting people. Now, the one kind of criticism I have is going back to those panels. I missed the first few minutes of that David Wise and, sorry to the other guy there, their panel, because it took me a little bit of time to figure out exactly where they were, because it's like, they had like really just one panel room, but it wasn't, I don't know, it feels like it should have been more obvious there, but maybe it wasn't, I don't know. But it didn't say like panel room or whatever like that. It had some other name, but I felt that could have been handled better, and they could have posted like a schedule up, like on the door, like a lot of conventions do. Obviously, that stuff can change very last minute, but you should be able to at least print it out and then stick it on the door or something like that, so people know, okay, I need to come back around whatever hour. The other thing is that some of the panels, they had very large casts. Like the gaming YouTuber panel that I went to, also had, like things would take much longer because like people would want to have everyone on the panel answer the same question, and that took up a lot of time. So as cool as it was to see all those folks on there, it may have been a little, like I said, every panel was given like 45 minutes, so that may not have been enough for some of them. Alright, well, before we sign off, I always like to end these discussions with a little recap of the recent episodes from shows on the Pokécasters Network. I don't have a new episode out just yet. Still working on stuff. Still working with Anne on scheduling our Mystery Dungeon discussion. We're going to be discussing the second round of Mystery Dungeon games, the ones that were exclusively on the DS based on Generation 4. So those are the Explorers games. But let's see, some other shows on the Pokécast Network. Poké Science, If It Quacks Like a Psyduck. That sounds interesting. I guess they're probably talking about sounds animals make. Critical Hit Monthly, Fish Are Food, Not Friends. So, not sure what that one. Welcome to the World of Pokemon. It's up to episode 91, Cloyster. And then the Not a Scratch podcast, they're doing a Q&A episode. So that's interesting for that. So, yeah. Critical Hit Monthly and Not a Scratch, I believe, are sort of like tabletop ones, I believe, if I remember correctly. But yes, so those are some of the new episodes on some of those shows. Like I said, I do hope to get another episode out. As far as the feed, let's see, the next one would be, Pokemon 25, the album discussion, would be the next one that would be coming on the feed, hopefully sometime this month. Okay, well, so that takes care of our little slideshow. All right, well, so I just would like to know, if you have any thoughts on the Midwest Gaming Classic, please let us know. If you went there or have any other questions about it, please go ahead and toss those in the comments. We always appreciate that. All right, folks, thanks.